Welcome to an additional video for my original top 10 missing legendary lords in Total Warhammer 2. This video is for all the ones that could not fit in my first list, but I wanted to mention anyway. So technically this is a prequel. In retrospect I should probably have made a top 20 list, but it would have been quite a long video and I prefer having more concise lists. Well, as concise as I can get with my ramblings. I hope you enjoy, and if you have not watched my first top 10 missing legendary lords list yet, the link is in the description. In that video I made a mistake. Alariel the Radiant wasn't the sacrifice for Nagash's ritual, it was her pseudo-daughter Alith Anar, daughter of Tyrion. Apologies, it has been 3 years since I read the book, and all these elven names mix up in my head. At the end of this video I have some honourable mentions that did not make it as a listed number in either of my lists, so stay tuned for that, but for now, we kick off this list with an ancient mummified toad. Number 10. Lord Kroak. Venerable Lord Kroak, defender of Itza and the deliverer of Itza, is said to have been the first of the Slann mage priests spawned upon the world, the eldest of the fabled first generation. The mysterious Old One Tepok taught Kroak the winds of magic, and it was the serene Potek who shared the secrets of unwinding the threads of time. It is written that Lord Kroak and his peers were the ones to teach the first ancestors of the elves to wield magic. These things and more has Kroak seen, and it is said that he is fated to endure until the last moment of the universe itself. Lord Kroak made the most profound of sacrifices during the Great Catastrophe, but his indomitable spirit would not concede defeat and he became the first of the relic priests. In the wake of the defense of Itza, Lord Kroak's loyal skink attendants lamented the death of their almighty master, whose body was scattered far and wide. Diligently, the skinks collected every last scrap of the ravaged body, and with great reverence, the remains were swathed in resin-soaked wrappings. Thus was created the first relic priest, of which many more have been created. The lizard men have found the spirits of these departed Slann so powerful that they often linger near their former bodies. In times of need, a relic priest is brought forth from hidden crypts to enact once more the great plan of the Old Ones. Now, behind the enigmatic visage of his golden death mask, he can no longer communicate, but his spirit form can still interact with the material world. Some vestige of power resides in him still, a distant echo of former glory, yet strong enough to unleash destruction upon his enemies. At need, his shriveled and lifeless husk is brought forth from Itza, and it has guided the lizardmen to yet further victories. Kroak is only number 10 on my list because he is technically in the game already, just as a cutscene. He would be a very powerful caster, but he wouldn't really be anything that Mazdamundi isn't, which is another reason why he is so low on my list. If I wanted another Lizardmen legendary lord, I think I would prefer something new, rather than another Slann mage priest. Don't get me wrong, he would be amazing, but I prefer my legendary lords to bring something different to the battlefield. Number 9. Malus Darkblade. Malus Darkblade, the tyrant of Hagreef, was always ambitious, even by the lofty standards of Hagreef's warring families. For long years he played the deadly game of politics and assassination, and played it well, but finally his thirst for power led Darkblade into the clutches of an even darker being than he. Rumours of a great power hidden in the distant north set Darkblade on a quest that led him deep into the realm of chaos. It is a testament to Darkblade's determination that he not only survived his journey, but at last came before the Temple of Kul Hadar, in which his prize could not be found. Alas for Darkblade, the great power within the temple was something not easily bent to mortal will. Long centuries ago, the demon Zarkan had been bound within Kul Hadar, and Darkblade now unwittingly presented it an opportunity for escape. Blinded by avarice, Darkblade was possessed by the demon. In that instant, his life and soul were forfeit. He had but one way of escaping his fate, to find 5 artifacts of power that would fully free Zarkan from his ancient prison and thus see Darkblade's soul restored. He only had a year to succeed, or else to remain in the demon's thrall for eternity. Though the search took every waking hour of allotted year, even killing his own father to get one of his artifacts, Darkblade finally succeeded in his quest. Upon the eve of his doom, he returned to the Kul Hadar with the artifacts and performed the ritual that would set the demon free, but Zarkan had tricked the Dark Elf. Upon escaping from Darkblade's body, the treacherous demon stole his black soul. From that moment on, the fates of Darkblade and Zarkon was forever intertwined. In the years since, Darkblade has become legendary in Naggaroth as a great warrior and leader whose hatred can overcome any opposition. Wielding the Warp Sword of Cain, the only surviving artifact from that long-distant quest, Darkblade has hacked a path of bloody ruin across the frozen north, drawing upon Zarkon's power when needed, but relying first and foremost on his own dark determination and limitless reservoir of hate. Malus Darkblade would be nothing new to the Dark Elves which we cannot already get out of Malekith or your average Dreadlord, which is why he's number 9 on this list. He has a great story behind him, and is a badass in all meanings of the word, but his history and lore wouldn't really translate over to the game, and unless players know the character, or have read his books, then he would seem just the same as all the other sword-wielding Dark Elf lords. He could have some interesting mechanics that are brought to life in the game based on his exploits in his previous adventures, but I don't think this would be enough for the average gamer to recognise his true potential and his rich past. But I love his stories, so he managed to get number 9 on my list. Number 8. Drycha. Drycha, the Bria Maven of Woe, is a powerful spirit of Athol Loren. Long ago, Drycha held court amongst the roots of Adivok, the great glorious creature known in recent times as a Tree of Woe. But most believe that Drycha lost her mind when Morga's death tainted the ground forever, but in truth, she was capricious and malevolent for many long years before that tragedy. Drycha remembers well the days before the coming of the elves, and has ever rued the folly that shackled the forest to mortal whim and fate. She rarely converses with others, even the dryads who serve her as handmaidens, but instead chants a mantra of the names of all the fellow spirits whom she believes have been failed by the elves. As old as Drycha is, she still possesses a crystal clear memory, and it is doubtful that she will ever reach the end of her tally. New names are added with every battle between Athol Loren and the outside world. In the early years of the alliance between the elves and the forest, Drycha was ever in evidence about the glades and the groves, watching the elves and examining their every action for any sign of betrayal. She has been seen little in the years since Morga's blood was spilt upon her glade, though she is known to commune with Coedel, a tree man of great age and power, and serves as his herald while the great being lies shackled in the depths of the wildwood. Such a thing cannot help but provoke unease, for Coedel's distrustful attitude of the Wood Elves is legend. He is so incredibly ancient that it is difficult to ascertain his motivation, for Coedel has forgotten more than many younger beings, the elves included, will ever know. If these two embittered spirits have found common cause, as it appears, it can only be a matter of time before the balance of Loren Forest is thrown into disarray. In recent years, strange tales have come to Athol Loren, worrying rumours of Drycha's activities. On the fringe of the great Drockwold forest in the Empire, the peasants tell stories of the trees that come alive, hungry for blood. On the edge of the forests of Arden and Bretonnia, villagers gather only deadwood for their purposes, citing tales of other settlements found ruined and torn, the inhabitants left as scraps of tattered meat by the vengeance of the trees. To many, these events seem as senseless as they are apparently random, but if they are indeed the work of Drycha and her handmaidens, there must surely be a greater goal behind them than mere slaughter. Though, what the goal is remains to be seen. Alas, even Nieth, the prophetess, cannot see the destination for which Drycha strives, for the road leading there is hidden by blood and horror. An angry, insane, ancient tree lady, very powerful and a bit of a change for the Wood Elves. She would get insane buffs if ever in battle against Morga for the Beastmen to convey her lore. Drycha would buff the wooden units of the Wood Elves. Dryads, Treemen, Tree Lords would all get boosted stats with her leading them, and they would also be lower in upkeep if under her banner. She would be unbreakable to convey her madness and bloodlust. She only reaches number 7 because I would always rather play as Durthu over Drycha, but that's a personal preference. Number 7. Konrad von Carstein. Konrad von Carstein, known by many bloody names such as Konrad the Butcher, Konrad the Bloody, or Konrad the Beast, was an infamously violent vampire count of Sylvania, known from the annals of history for his cruelty, corruption, and complete insanity. There are a few things more dangerous than a violent lunatic, but one of them is an immortal violent lunatic, with the strength and speed of a vampire. Adding a literal thirst for blood to Konrad's figurative mindset did little for the noble's stretched sanity. The first of the von Carsteins had considered this as a potential advantage, and Konrad was one of the last of the von Carsteins to be embraced into the family. Perhaps Konrad's complete lack of scruples and his tenuous grasp on reality amused Vlad, and assured that Konrad could never truly be a legitimate threat to his rule, unlike his deviously cunning son-in-darkness Manfred. In retrospect, however, it might have been better served his dynasty if Vlad had simply cut off Konrad's head when the chance first presented itself. His insane depravity resulted in far more harm than good for his dynasty. Once given the blood kiss, Konrad made no attempt to hide his supernatural powers, and fed openly on his friends and subjects as well as cats, rats, cows, wandering peddlers and anything else with a pulse that came too close. Konrad appointed himself as something of a berserk enforcer for Vlad, executing anyone who displeased the Count. This, naturally, also included anyone who displeased Konrad. Over time, this encompassed many victims, including many generals, priests of all descriptions, people with a squint, and several necromancers who had laughed at Konrad's pitiful magical skills. An infamously violent vampire to finish off the von Carstein family. His fanatical violence would be a sight to see on the battlefield, perhaps the most bloodthirsty of the vampires so far, but he only reaches number 7 on this list because I feel the vampire count's starting legendary lords is already a tad oversaturated, with 5 lords available. So add in a 6th, which wouldn't be vastly different from the others, feels like a bit of a stretch. Number 6. Araloth. Araloth the Bold, or Araloth of the Hooked Blade, is the current Lord of Taliesin, and the personal champion of Queen Ariel herself. The elf that would be known as Araloth was not always a hero. In his youth he was a craven lordling who had not the mettle to hunt any prey that could hunt him in return. Whilst others went to battle in his stead, Araloth caroused and hunted in the company of worthless friends, and tried to forget his shame. It was upon one such hunt that Araloth was thrown from his horse and separated from all companions save for Scaran, his trusted hawk. After wandering lost for many hours, Araloth came to a strange glade. Though dawn had broken scant hours before, the lordling now beheld a crescent moon hanging low in a darkened sky. It was a scene to stir the heart, yet Araloth scarcely saw it. He had eyes only for the elf maiden who stood alone at the glade's heart, and the monstrous four-armed demon that menaced her. There, at last, Araloth found his courage, for even his craven heart could not abandon the maid to the demon's cruel pleasures. Before he realized it, Araloth was running to her aid, and his hunting spear soon gouged the demon's flank. The beast was swift, and Araloth would have perished from its counterblow had Scaran not descended from the skies to tear out the demon's eyes. Blinded, the beast failed madly, but Araloth ducked easily under its claws and thrust his spear deep into its black heart. As the demon fell dead, Araloth closed his eyes, amazed both at his victory and at the courage which he had won. When he opened them once more, the demon's body had vanished. Looking upon the maiden once more, Araloth saw at last beyond her mortal guise, and knew that he was in the presence of a goddess. Long they walked under the stars, the goddess and the lordling. They spoke of many things, and she revealed to him many wonders. The goddess told of how she had watched and counselled the elves since the dawning of the world, speaking plainly when the Creator allowed it, and through dreams when he would not. But even the power of the gods must fade, said she sadly. Hers was nearly spent, but she had still 3 great gifts to bestow. Araloth, freed now of his fears, was the first of these, a hero to defend the elves in the coming dark. The second would be Araloth's firstborn daughter, a saviour to bring hope when it is needed most. Of the third gift, however, the goddess would not speak, for there were some secrets even she could not share. Soon after, Araloth fell into a deep sleep. When he awoke, he did so in his hall, with friends at his bedside. He had been thrown from his horse, they said, his senses scattered by the fall. When Araloth told them of his tale, his companions laughed, thinking that he had dreamt it all. Not wishing to be thought mad, Araloth laughed also, but his heart knew the truth. In the years after, Araloth became the fearless hero that the goddess had foretold, his triumphs the inspiration for many a song. Following the Battle of the Arden, in which Araloth slew Morgul the Corrupter, the Mage Queen decreed that he would thereafter be her royal champion, an honour not bestowed in living memory. Yet despite the renown and the accolades, Araloth has never forgotten she who made him thus. A normal start for the Wood Elves, not a giant tree man or a living god or an angry tree lady. Araloth would be the first melee lord for the Wood Elves that is just an elf. He would have a great line of sight thanks to his evil companion, and would be much like the Dark Elf Dreadlords where he can also be ranged, but his focus would be melee. A good all-rounder for the Wood Elves, I think. Not as exciting as some others, but one that wouldn't be amiss in the roster, and one I would like to play as. Number 5. Alith Anar. Alith Anar, Prince of the Nagarathi and the Shadow King, is the current ruler of the Kingdom of the Nagarathi and the last member of the noble line of House Anar. Tradition maintains that the Nagarathi chose Alith Anar as ruler after Malekith fled into the west. The Lord was the last heir of a great line, his forebears having been slain by the Witch King's minions. In those days there were many Dark Elves still hiding in Ulthuan, and Alith Anar took to their eradication with a bloody vengeance. Those of his foes who were not killed in battle were crucified upon trees, where those who passed could witness their grisly fate. As he attacked and burned each enemy encampment, his fame grew. None know Alith Anar's final fate. The Shadow Warriors believe he still walks the world, a restless spirit of vengeance. They tell that on the darkest night of the season of frost, a grey-garbed figure can be seen kneeling before Eothlir's tomb, head bowed in silent contemplation of the bloody deeds the coming year will bring. Other High Elves scoff at such tales, but few amongst them would not wish to be proven wrong. For his part, the Witch King has passed beyond the veil of mortal concerns, but if Malekith any longer fears anything, he fears the vengeance of Alith Anar. The Shadow King, Alith Anar, would be enough of a playstyle change to Tyrion to warrant his placement on the High Elf roster as another High Elf Lord. The one elf, if any, Malekith fears, Alith Anar is rumoured to be dead, but his angry spirit still roams the world. This could be quite an interesting character to play, one especially against the Dark Elves, as the Shadow King had a tendency to basically nail Dark Elves he found hiding in Ulthuan to trees. He could also finally bring Shadow Warriors into the game, which would be amazing. He did not surpass Alarielle in my original list, however, because of how different Alarielle would be playstyle wise for the High Elves. Number 4. Gorbad Ironclaw. Gorbad Ironclaw is one of the most infamous of all Orc war bosses. In his day, Gorbad led a massive invasion that almost crushed the Empire. His army succeeded in slaying Emperor Sigismund and wiping the Imperial province of Solund off the map. Gorbad was a hulking Orc who rose to fame as the leader of the Ironclaw tribe. It was he who first built the Iron Rock, the most redoubtable Orc fortress in the Old World. Yet conquering greenskin tribes was no real challenge for Gorbad, and so he inevitably crossed into the human land of the Empire. It was his horrific deeds there that raised Gorbad's status, making him a bloody inspiration to his kind and a byword for invasions done proper. It is said that Gorbad could single-handedly destroy enemy regiments and headbutt a warboar into tongue-lolling comatose state. However, it wasn't his remarkable strength that allowed Gorbad to wreak such havoc. Gorbad was a supreme war boss, able to drive his troops, whether orcs or goblins, to their utmost. Tribes from all corners travelled to join this legendary leader. Most of the truly hulking orc war bosses disdain the weaker types that rush to join a successful war, generally considering goblinoids too puny to aid the cause. Gorbad did detract many hard units, especially orc biggins, yet he had an eye for when to use the lesser types too. He was a master at ordering goblin screens and wolf rider flank attacks. Despite his brawn and predilection for close combat, Gorbad wasn't above winning a battle through massed archery or war machine batteries. He used the troops he had and drove them to do their best. It was this flexibility that guarded the mighty warboss a bloody and unbroken string of triumph after triumph. Of course, it helped that if the battle wasn't going his way, Gorbad could rear up Nala, his immensely large warboar, and bellow out his war, so that it echoed across the battlefield like thunder. Every greenskin who heard this war cry surged forth with renewed and rampant violence, a call to once again rise to greatness and to bloody victory. Gorbad didn't make it to my original top 10 because he is essentially another Orc war boss, which is a running theme for this list. They had to be quite unique to make the first top 10, with great potential to bring some new mechanics into the game or bring a different presence to the battlefield. We have Grimgor and Azag already for bulky greenskin lords, and Grom the Paunch was so widely different that he made it over Gorbad. But Gorbad still gets quite high up on this one because he is the Boar Boy, friend to all the greenskins. He is different enough with his rich lore and unique focus on every unit available to him to make it on this list. He is very powerful heavy cavalry lord, one that will buff all units in the greenskin army. He would start on his boar Nala, the first for the greenskins to start on a mount. He would be quite fast too, with a huge charge bonus, one to be reckoned with and one that I would enjoy playing quite a lot. An orc with tactics, and one that didn't need Nagash whispering through a crown to understand tactical worth. Number 3. Grim Burloksson. Grim Burloksson is the youngest dwarf to pass the many rituals required to be named a Master Engineer. As the son of the Guildmaster Burlok Damninson, it was highly expected that he would follow in his father's footsteps. Even as a beardling, Grim exhibited all the signs of a skilled inventor. When other aspirants were still learning basic principles, he had already constructed a self-lighting pipe, a steam-powered beard braider, and a double-barreled rifle that could kill half a dozen greenskins in one shot. Even the eldest guild members conceded his ability. However, there were signs that his judgment was suspect, and he did not value the ancient laws that dwarf engineers are expected to follow. Grim's rebellious ways are not unexpected, for his father also went beyond the experimentations attempted by all headstrong young engineers. Only a tragic accident at the ritual humiliation of a close comrade forced Burlok to change his ways, and many say that Grim is heading down the same wrong path. Unheeding of advice, Grim continues to forego the precision tuning so beloved by his guild, and instead focuses on trial and error of his own bold inventions. He has devised a telescopic sight that fits over his battle helm and better allows him to triangulate aiming computations, and those who have fired using his enhanced black powder and modified crossbow bolts find their range greatly increased. In emulation of his father's augmentations, Grim has invented his own steam-powered gauntlet, thus increasing his own strength significantly. An eccentric, if somewhat erratic genius, the young engineer torments his guildmates by attempting new designs, questioning past methods, and stubbornly refusing to give up new inventions. I really like the idea of a dwarven legendary lord that is an engineer. When I play as a dwarves, I always end up having a massive array of artillery and thunderers, so having a lord that not only buffs their power, but also makes the upkeep on them cheaper would be great fun for me personally. Grim would start with an organ gun and perhaps a gyro bomber. He would be less than average in melee, but would have extended range on his rifle and be very deadly at range. He did not make it on my original list due to me preferring the idea of Bugman and Ironbrow over Grim, but he was a close contender. Number 2. Tehenhauin. Tehenhauin is the name of the first and greatest prophet of the serpent god, Sotek. It began when Tehenhauin rallied the population of a disease-ridden Chakwa, leading them out of the defiled city. Before he left, he claimed 2 treasures, a gleaming sacrificial blade and the hidden plaques of Chakwa, which proclaimed the coming of the serpent god. Turning the plaques into a totem, Tehenhauin bore them at the forefront of the massive skink migration. In this way, a groundswell of momentum built behind Tehenhauin and placed him at the apex of the new cult of Sotek. Idolised by his fellow skinks in a manner previously reserved for slam mage priests, Tehenhauin prophesied the serpent god's coming. Things may have gone ill for Tehenhauin, yet the skink priest backed his chittering oratory with bold acts, leading armies of followers to victory after victory over the Skaven that were rampaging across Lustria. Many thousands of captured ratmen were cruelly sacrificed to Sotek, acts that Tehenhauin promised would bring forth their vengeful god. The appearance of a twin-tailed comet in the skies was taken as proof of his imminent arrival. Upon the field of battle, Tehenhauin attacked in the manner of his tailed deadly deity, forked assaults. A serpent strikes quickly, and so too did Tehenhauin, focusing his army's venomous energy on the enemy's weak points. As if an answer to his many sacrifices, serpents of all varieties formed a writhing carpet at his feet. After leading his troops to victory at the Maliente Swamp, Tehenhauin had grown so popular that the Slan had to consider his wishes. None know Tehenhauin's ultimate fate. but some say he is still using his powers to hunt the hated vermin. It would seem impossible for a short-lived skink to attain this length of years, but it is whispered that as a snake sheds its skin and is renewed, so too is Sotek's chosen. Since those days, at times of great import, a single red-crested skink priest has emerged from the deep jungle, claiming the title of Tehenhauin, the once and future prophet of Sotek. The first skink Sartan legendary lord for the Lizardmen, and the second Lizardmen lord to make it on this list. Tehenhauin would be a good variety for the Lizardmen, a solid and quick melee attacker who was not a Slan Mage Priest or Saurus. He could have a special mechanic after battles where instead of executing his captives, he could sacrifice them to gain the powers of Sotek and buff his army. The more powerful the unit that is sacrificed, the better the buff. He would buff skink units in his army, make them cheaper to recruit and upkeep. He would have a melee and leadership buff for when he attacked Skaven. The Prophet of Sotek would be great fun to play and open up the Lizardmen to a bit of variety. Number 1. Festus the Leechlord. If an unfortunate traveller were to stray onto the twisted roads that lead from the northern forests into the Chaos Wastes, he might be paid a visit by a most unsavoury individual during the dark of the night. A shuffling, muttering figure stalks these lands, his moth-eaten robes gently clinking with vials containing unimaginable concoctions, which he is seeking to test out upon those he can catch or deceive. A devotee of the plague god Nurgle, this mysterious apothecary is quite mad, though he once bore the respect of physicians, alchemists and scientists across the length and breadth of the old world. Dr. Festus was once a skilled chirurgeon who founded hospices all across the province of Nordland, and was as compassionate as he was gifted. Specialising in curative unguents and salves, the good doctor cured hundreds of people every year. With Festus's guidance, Nordland overcame outbreaks of the screaming ague, black leg, and even the crippling ghoulpox. It was the onset of gnashing fever that marked the beginning of the end for Festus. Try as he might, the doctor could not stem the spread of this new and highly contagious disease. Festus locked himself in his laboratory, working ceaselessly to create a healing elixir. Countless sleepless nights passed, and despite his best efforts, Festus still had no cure. Those plague victims had managed to sequester in his laboratory were dying, and he was powerless to prevent it. At the last of his test subjects shook themselves to death, Festus dropped to his knees, crying out for help. One by one, the slack-jawed corpses in Festus' laboratory turned their heads to look at him. With one voice emanating from a score of parched throats, they promised to give Festus the knowledge necessary to cure not only this plague, but all diseases in the world. In exchange for a lifetime of service, in his desperation, Festus agreed. In the blink of a bloodshot eye, Festus's mind was filled with every detail of every sickness, ailment, and plague known to the great god Nurgle. This drove him entirely mad, washed away his compassion, and left nothing more than an intimate knowledge of disease and a desire to experiment. Festus became the Leechlord of Nurgle, who goes to war in the name of furthering his revolting studies. Though his curative powers are greater than ever before, woe betide the fool who crosses the doctor, for he is always in need of new test subjects and not above force-feeding his latest concoctions to his victims in his quest to bring ever more repugnant forms of life into the world. It is a better fate by far to die on the battlefield than to be captured alive by Festus and used for his latest dark experiments. Uncle Festus, the Dark Apothecary, is a mad, tainted, rotting, cruel and surprisingly respected being, one that would be a lot of fun to start as in the Chaos faction. He just got squeezed out of this list by Gutrot Spume. It was a very hard decision not to add him into the original list, but Gutrot swayed me more. Festus would have access to some spells, some destructive and some more helpful to his own allies. He could help heal units with his many potions. This would be dangerous though, as each is an experiment. It could either heal the unit, or afflict it with a deadly illness. Festus could also experiment on any captives left after a battle. The more units you capture at the end of the battle, the more souls Festus can experiment on. These experiments would lead to more powerful spells, potions and buffs to your units. He would be bulky and slow, naturally, as a favoured one of Nurgle, and would have limited melee capabilities, but as a support lord, he would be unmatched. And that was my additional top 10 missing legendary lords. Here are my honourable mentions. All Tomb King lords, until the DLC comes out. Luthor Huss, Harry the Hammer, Taurox, Screech Caventail, Throt the Unclean, Lokir Felheart, and Tsar Boris. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like or a comment. Please feel free to add your own lists below, and I will see you next time.